Well, the time is just gone 4 minutes past nine as we continue into the second half of this morning's edition of News and Views. And this hour of News and Views is brought to you by Africa Muslims Agency. And we still have got a fair amount of ground to cover this morning. Shortly, we will be talking with AML, the Association of Muslim Accountants and Lawyers, about an upcoming event. We still have got a local story, Ivory Park, welcoming a new spiritual landmark in the suburb. The Al Nur Islamic Center Masjid, which officially opens its doors to the community today. So that is quite important. And also looking at culture, resistance, and dialogue. And this is the second Palestine Youth and Family Market with founder of Social Intifada, Khalid Bauda. But before that, we are joined by Farida Lavangee, and we are talking. She is a director at Turning Point Chartered Accountants, and this is the annual NPO, non-profit organization, and PBO, which is public benefit organizations, a workshop. And we know in South Africa that there are many NPOs and PBOs, and particularly within the Muslim community. And if we have been following developments, we know that there is a lot of pressure on these organizations to comply, both from a legal point of view, from a tax perspective as well. And also, we need to be aware of what is playing out, and also looking at things like how you can benefit from a tax point of view, and also in terms of fundraising. All of that is impacting on NPOs and PBOs, which play a very, very crucial role within South African society. So let's go across and join the Farida Lavangee. Farida, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome and jazakallah khairan so much for your time.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yes, before we just get into specifics with regard to the upcoming Amal event, the point I had made is with regards to NPOs and PBOs. They have come under the radar, they've come under the spotlight, even from an organization like SARS as well, and looking at legal tax compliance. Absolutely important, crucial. And it's important that these organizations are aware of what is required of them, and also what is coming.
Yes, definitely. I think if we have to look at the nonprofit sector, especially in South Africa, it's a huge industry. I'm going to use the term loosely, but it is a huge sector where organizations, we have, I think, hundreds of thousands doing different types of work. But the sector has so much compliance, so much regulatory requirements that, if you are not aware of it, or you don't understand, or maybe you don't even have the capacity to comply with these things, it can have a significant impact on your organization. You touched on SARS, for example. I mean, SARS has a whole lot of compliance requirements. I mean, they just last year or the year before, they issued new requirements for nonprofit organizations that are 18A registered. Now, a lot of our Islamic organizations are in fact registered where they're issuing 18A certificates, and most organizations are not aware of these requirements that's there, which could ultimately impact their registrations with SARS. So it definitely is a huge area of where Amal has identified that these nonprofit organizations need assistance. Often there's non-compliance because maybe the person who's there, who's in the role of a finance person, may not necessarily have the experience or the qualifications, or maybe sometimes because of budgetary constraints, which is often the case, that they can't actually now bring in somebody who is going to handle all of the compliance requirements, or outsource or deal with experts that can assist them to be compliant. So that's actually the reason why Amal has decided to have this workshop, which we're going to be doing in the next week or so.
Yes, and also I think let's just qualify that who these NPOs and PBOs are, because this is basically almost every organization that
Hmm.
we are familiar with, whether it's your madrasa committee, whether you're looking at your mosque committee, whether you're looking at a zakah fund on a local level, and there are thousands and thousands of these organizations. So I think it's important to actually qualify that these don't have to be the bigger organizations that we are familiar with. They could be just a small community organization, and all of them are going to be impacted by tax, by legislation, by SARS, and the like.
Definitely. I think there's often this misconception that, okay, if you're worried about compliance, you must be a big organization. You only need to worry about SARS if you know you're large. But there's lots and lots of nonprofit organizations, especially you touched on madrasas or masjids. These organizations have been running for years, decades, but they're not registered. They are just operating and not aware of the compliance requirements, which is still applicable to them, whether you are a large organization like maybe Gift of the Givers or Africa Muslim Agency, where you are doing work on a global scale, or whether you are a small masjid that is serving your community, you still have the same requirements, depending obviously on the legal structure that you're in. So, yes, there is a compliance requirements for everybody, but it does depend on what sort of structure you are in. So obviously getting that information is vital, and getting that knowledge of what am I supposed to be complying with is obviously really critical for all organizations. So you rightly say in saying that it should not only be the large organizations that are attending this webinar or the function that we're having, it should be all nonprofits that are operating. And I mean, you're just going to get information. So there's no harm in joining. It's online, or you can also come in person, but there's no harm in coming in and getting that information so you can actually go back to your organization and make sure that you are fully compliant.
Yes. Now let's talk about Amal, because this we are fortunate in a sense that we have organizations within our communities, like the Association of Muslim Accountants and Lawyers. And Farida, if you could just provide us with a lot more information with regards to Amal, these annual webinars and forums that are being held, and this one specifically aimed at NPOs, PBOs, and just to understand the significance and why this is such a significant event on Amal's calendar.
Okay. So, as you mentioned, Amal hosts a whole number of webinars or workshops for the community. They obviously look at what is it that we need to upskill businesses with or individuals with, and then they host these workshops. So, obviously, this is an area they've identified for nonprofit organizations. And if we think about why is this so critical for organizations itself, majority of the nonprofit organizations are reliant on donors for funding. I mean, you have majority of them are relying on maybe the public donating to them, or larger corporates, or maybe large organizations from overseas to give donations to them. So their sustainability is directly linked to them getting in funding. Now, if your organization is not compliant, your donor confidence is going to be impacted. So if somebody, for example, reads up that your organization is being deregistered from Department of Social Development, which is something that was happening last year, where the DSD was actively deregistering organizations that were not compliant. Now, if your organization is not compliant, you are then not going to be able to secure funding from donors, because that confidence is going to be lost, and it's going to end up where your organization is obviously going to maybe have to close down, which means you're going to have people that are going to be out of jobs. So that donor confidence is so important for the viability of your organization, and it's so closely linked to your organization obviously being compliant.
Yes, I think you touch on a very important issue, because I also, read about thousands of organizations that are either deregistered, the final deregistration, or in in interim deregistration, for want of a better term, as well. And I'm not too sure whether many organizations that have been registered know that they are in this situation.
I don't think a lot of them know that. Sometimes it just depends on what information is with the Department of Social Development. So if we're using that as an example, it depends on whose details are there. So we had cases where certain organizations were receiving emails or notices from Department of Social Development notifying them that they are going to be deregistered if they do not get their compliance up to date. But there are other organizations where the information or the details that is there with the Department of Social Development is no longer accurate. It's for people that are maybe no longer at the organization. So there could be organizations out there that are deregistered or in the process of being deregistered and they don't actually know about it.
Mm, yes, and also, many organizations, as you mentioned, have been running for many, many years. And, people could have passed on as well. Those that were trustees of these organizations, they may have passed on and the information is not updated. And I think now I can just understand why this is so critical and why this is so crucial to update the information and, more importantly, to comply. But I know, obviously, Amal not working on its own. Yeah, there's a whole group of people that are working. And let's just talk about some of the other organizations, stakeholders that Amal has actually partnered with, to make this event possible, Farida.
Okay, so from a technical perspective, they partnered with us, Turning Point Chartered Accountants. So we're a firm here in Durban, and we actually specialize in the nonprofit sector. So the three presenters are all three directors from Turning Point. And obviously, the corporate sponsor for the event is Al Baraka Bank. And Al Baraka Bank obviously is known for their commitment to the NPO sector. Just last year, they ran workshops or a seminar throughout the country. So Durban, Cape Town, Joburg, where it was just to disseminate information to the NPO sector itself. So that's the two obviously sponsors or organizations that's working on this event. So Turning Point, which is me, and well, I'm part of Turning Point, and Al Baraka Bank.
Right. So obviously you've got experts on the field, and as you mentioned, that Turning Point, your focus is on NPOs. So who better to obviously to partner with in this webinar. And now let's just move on, and let's just elaborate again on this event in particular, the value that this event is going to bring to NPOs and PBOs.
I think you are not going to come across an event which is free and you're getting expert advice on how to ensure your organization is compliant. So I think it's critical for nonprofit organizations out there to join this event. I mean, what is the worst that's going to happen? You're going to come in for 3 to 4 hours maybe and just gain some information. So maybe you are fully compliant, but maybe there's things that you didn't know about, new information that's coming through. So I think that's important. So you want your organization to be compliant and you want to make sure that your team is fully equipped with all of the information they need to know in order to keep your organization compliant.
Yes. Let's talk about compliance. Now that you mentioned compliance, and perhaps, if we could just take this discussion in a lot more detail and for you to elaborate on how compliance actually will impact and the consequences, particularly for fundraising, as far as NPOs and PBOs are concerned. And again, we know that many of these organizations rely on fundraising, and if fundraising is impacted as a result of non-compliance, there are some serious consequences. And let's just look at an example. If a donor doesn't receive the Section 18 a certificate, his donor certificate, it could possibly affect future contributions, because they also rely on the tax benefits arising from donations that they've given to many of these organizations. So again, it's about ensuring that there is a relationship between the donor and the organization, and also in terms of the support that these NPOs and PBOs rely on, Farida?
Yes. So the donor, the link between the donor and the sustainability of the organization is very close. I mean, as I said earlier, organizations are reliant on the funding that they're getting from donors, whether they it's from somebody of this, like somebody they're approaching for a donation, whether it's corporate. The end goal is that you want your organization to be around, to be sustainable, but you have to work close with your donors, which means you need their confidence. Now, you mentioned about the 18A certificate. One of the compliance things with that is that 2 years ago, SARS introduced more requirements as to what information needed to be on the 18A certificate in order for the 18A certificate to be considered valid. Now, a lot of organizations are not aware of this. So they're still using the same templates that they were using from years ago, which just had basic information on it. So that's one thing. But as a donor, like if I use myself as an example, I give donations to some of the organizations that I know that we work with, and I then request my 18A. Now, if I have to keep hounding an organization for my 18A certificate, obviously as an individual, I'm not going to want to deal with them in the future because they obviously not, they're not providing me with the information timely. So, and then that comes down to what sort of systems are they using to issue these 18As? Is it manual, or is it now they're using a more sophisticated system, which also then impacts how they can comply with SARS requirements, which I'm going in a little bit more detail. But I think the important aspect is that, yes, you have to obviously maintain that confidence with your donors. Whether somebody's giving you 100 Rand or 100,000 Rand, the point is they're still a donor for your organization, and you have to make sure that you are compliant. So an 18A certificate, for example, has to be compliant with SARS requirements. It must be issued when the donor is requesting it, and must be issued in terms of all of the compliance requirements. Another example of compliance, I think, that can affect nonprofits. You have organizations that apply for funding to larger corporates or even to Department of Social Development, for example. And one of the requirements is that you have to have a most recent tax clearance certificate. Now, organizations are not aware, or it's only when they're doing this proposal that they suddenly now need to obtain a tax clearance. And then it's only then that they realize that the organization is not compliant, which now impacts their ability to submit this proposal and their ability to get more funding for the organization itself. So again, it's like the circle, you have to be compliant in order to secure more funding and in order to keep your organization sustainable.
Yes, Farida, let's get on to the event. And if you could tell us more about the event, when is it taking place, and also people who wish to participate, RSVP, I suppose, would be absolutely important, and I believe that this event is going to be taking place physically, in person, and also virtually.
Yes, so the date of the event is the 23rd of August, which is next week, Saturday. It is dual, so it is going to be in person, but obviously because of space, the in-person seats would be restricted. The in-person event will be taking place at the AML offices, which is in West Riding Row in Sherwood, which is by the 45th Mosque. So if you are physically wanting to attend, obviously the presenters would be there in person. So it would be best if you can to come out to the offices itself. That's 9 to 12. You have to obviously book because space is restricted. But for those of you that are unable to attend in person, and for those of you that are outside of the country, I've just heard yesterday that there's quite a bit of response from people outside of South Africa. So they're still sitting as trustees or still sitting on organizations, but they're no longer based here. So you can actually attend the session via Zoom. Obviously, you still need to RSVP. So the invite does include the RSVP address, but I'm just going to give it out. It's info@amal.co.za. So if you have not booked your seat as yet, whether it's virtual or whether it is in person, please go on and RSVP and secure your space.
Well, Jazakallah khairan so much for that. And once again, we just want to repeat RSVP to info@amal.co.za, whether you'd like to book a seat at the event, at the Amal offices, or also on the virtual Zoom link as well. And once again, encouraging many people, and also I suppose, people, particularly who deal with this, Farida, legal people, accountants, tax practitioners. And I think for them it's absolutely crucial, because in a lot of cases they are the people that do the work for these NPOs and PVOs.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you're getting access to people who are working in the sector, working with nonprofit organizations. So we are aware of, obviously, on the ground, what are the issues that are occurring on a day-to-day basis, what are the factors that are affecting organizations. So it's a good opportunity for nonprofits to come out, meet us, and obviously just gain some information. And maybe they have questions that, they haven't been able to ask, and there will be a segment which will allow for them to ask these questions during the session.
Well, brilliant. Jazakallah khairan so much for that, Farida, and Jazakallah khairan for taking time out and highlighting this event. And we will continue encouraging people to be part and parcel of this event. And once again, hats off to Amal, for another wonderful initiative, recognizing that these are issues within our communities, and more importantly, to be able to do something about it. And I'm sure it's going to be most beneficial, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of value add to this event. So we thank you for that and for your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yes, Farida Lavangee, Director at Turning Point Chartered Accountants, with us this morning with regard to the upcoming annual NPO and PBO workshop, courtesy of Amal, Turning Point, Al Baraka. And this is taking place once again. We'd like to reinforce next week, Saturday, the 23rd of August, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Physical attendance will be at the Amal boardroom, and there will be a virtual attendance as well. And RSVP to info@amal.co.za. With it, we're going for a break. We'll be back.